And we are live. Hello, Danny.
Hey, how's it going?
It's doing great. It's Friday. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. It's a busy day, but I like the energy of bouncing from one thing to the other.
So, Danny, um, this is the first question I ask every guest. And the question is like, who is Danny Robashkin? And that question is not like, I'm not asking you to define yourself by the work, like where you work and what's the company. This is more like, who's the person behind the persona? This is more like an introspective questions about like who you think you are.
Okay, interesting. The tricky thing is, I mean, honestly, and a lot of what I do actually define myself very much based off of the work, but sometimes not. I mean, I've basically been doing this, and by this I mean Make as a studio for over 20 years now, and it's basically the only job I've really had. So, very much my goals, my dreams, my aspirations are very interconnected with the studio. The studio's needs drive a lot of what I do, but a lot of what I want to do ends up shaping what the studio does. So, if I kind of take a step back, perhaps, from this is what the studio needs and more to like what I am interested in. I've been thinking about that actually a decent amount lately because people have been asking me about this. And I think that I, as a person, am trying to define goals, find challenges, and then accomplish them, basically. Um, and a lot of what I end up doing, as far as the studio is concerned, um, ends up mirroring that to a certain extent.
Okay. This is very um again work centric.
Hmm.
Now, if you let's say you could split work aside, you know, what I mean, how do you define yourself when you're not in work? Even if those are intertwined. I know those are like heavily
Yeah,
intertwined.
no. I understand. I think I understand where you're going, and in unfortunately, I am kind of pushing back because I really do end up. For me, work is not just work, right? Like it is essentially, people have hobbies, people have interests that they have, and I don't have a lot of those things outside of what I do here, but that is by design. So I end up, whatever my interests are, I end up looping them into the studio and into work as much as possible. So that's why I'm kind of trying to say that very often the studio ends up being a manifestation of myself and my interests. It's not the other way around.
Okay. Um Something you just said that like catch my attention. You mentioned like setting yourself goals and challenges. And I'm curious, what's the angle of that for you? Because there's different reasons why you might set up yourself challenges and goals. Like goals, of course, like gives you purpose. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
have some like a place to aim and you go there. But like challenges often is like it's either I want to level up or um I have something to prove. I'm not saying that in a negative way at all.
Yeah, no.
Um so what is your angle on that like facet or aspect of your personality?
So I think that when I think of these challenges and when I think of these goals, they end up being essentially. I like to both do things that are very technical, and I like to do things that are creative, and I like to do problem solving, and I like to do things that maybe not everyone has necessarily tried doing. So, very often, the kinds of goals that I set up for myself end up being some kind of amalgamation of all those different aspects. So very recently, someone asked me kind of like, well, what would you do if you weren't working in animation or if you weren't doing something creative? And I kind of said, I'd probably develop apps or something like that, right? I'd find some kind of problem or some kind of like missing function out there, and I try to kind of solve for that. Um, but why am I doing this and not that? Is because I think that there's something very interesting about creativity, visual, motion, storytelling. So then I try to blend both of those things together. And then you also have the aspect, like I mentioned, of well, what are things that not everyone is doing? What is something that's just a little bit off of the beaten path? Something where there isn't necessarily this is the formula, this is exactly how to get there, and you just have to kind of like follow someone else. And instead, what are things that you can do that are a little bit different? Um, and I think maybe one of the final components there would be always like setting that goal just like out of reach, if you know what I mean. Like, because the worst thing is to like accomplish like your mission, and then you either have to come up with like a completely different mission or something like that. And I think that if the goal is just you keep updating it to always be just barely out of reach, then you always have that kind of motivation to keep going and the motivation to keep reaching for something else. Um, there was a time in my life where I didn't follow this exactly, and that was probably my most. I don't really get depressed. I don't like. I don't want to use like that word, but it was my most kind of like low point where I was. It was ironic because things in life and things in the studio were going fine, like everything was good, everything was fine. Like there, it was, but it was ironically the least challenging period, and that was my least happy. So I don't know what that exactly says, but I think that that kind of connects to what you were talking about.
No, no, it's interesting. Like I will like like split my answer like in different levels, but like first of all about like what you say about goals and challenges, like what I usually do on some projects is like I pick a technique that I never used.
Mm-hmm.
Like because first of all it will put me out of my comfort zone like creatively, and then it will also like put me out of my comfort zone technically, uh making me like forcing me to learn new things, and then of course seeing the interconnection about those things with other things I didn't foreseen before, and thus like growing. um so what you and then what you're saying about like the moment where you weren't, yeah, like you weren't being challenged being like one of your more like your low point. You're not the first one in the podcast that mentions that. um other guests have mentioned like, yeah, the business was going great, but I wasn't feeling right. um and ultimately some of them took different paths, like some of them like left the studio and went like more solo because that like fitted more what they had envisioned, and others like just grew up inside of the studio structure to do something else. And I'm just curious, like if this sort of mindset you also apply it um to your personal life.
So my personal life that is not connected to the studio, I would say no, I don't think so. But again, I it's because my personal life that is removed from the studio, I kind of like I almost take the opposite approach when it comes to all of that. That's where like if I spend most of my time at the studio making decisions, when it comes to my personal life, I'm like, you guys make the decision or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to plan. I don't have to make the decisions. Do whatever. I'm going along for the ride. So I think if we say personal life that is removed from the studio, because like I said, I don't necessarily make a distinction between those two. I actually could go opposite. I'm the complete opposite as far as like how I approach it, what my goals are, and whatnot. It's more like I want to be chill. I want everything to flow. I don't have to worry. It's not about finding any more challenges because I'm all challenged out, right? Like I've spent I'm more than enough effort and time on those challenges. Now let's chill.
And just as a side joke, like you don't get slack at home for it because generally when I've been like fighting all day at work and I'm back home, I'm like you. I just want to like just chill and relax. But like the people waiting for me at home, they're not expecting me to be chill and relaxing. They will be requiring me to be active and proactive. So
Yeah, I mean, sorry, it's not that like I can't be engaged and I can't whatever. It's like I'm not like a complete jelly creature at that point. I won't go that far, but it's just you know, I don't have like oh, I can't wait to get home from work so that I can go biking, or I can't wait to go on vacation so I can visit country XYZ because I've just been wanting to do that and that's my thing. Like I just don't have those interests. Like my interests are kind of building and creating, and I just loop that stuff into work. So after work is done, which sometimes it's not like done, right? I mean, you're still sometimes engaged early in the morning before going to work, later at night after coming home from work. Um, but that's the point where just the agenda changes, the mindset changes just a little bit. Um, but I think that's fine. I think as long as you feel fulfilled, I think that's the most important thing.
yeah, the reason I just like dabble and sometimes this doesn't follow like a linear path is because I want this podcast to be like a resource for other people out there
Hmm.
to see how like diverse the creative community can be and different lifestyles and different like approaches to how is work and life. And so you're kind of like, for example, like the first one that kind of like everybody has been like all of the people that have interviewed are hardworking. But you're the first one that like kind of really conveys this idea of like, yeah, I try to loop everything into the work.
Hmm.
Um and like what's funny is like when I was doing some research about you, there's not much about you online. So it's interesting to go a little bit blind. And but something I found is that like much as Bruce Wayne, you live a double life. So
Oh, I do.
by day you work on the studio, you are like one of the owners, and by night you run a nonprofit. And so the studio thing is the classic one. So I'm most interested in the nonprofit,
Hmm.
and I'm curious like how that came to be, and what were your motivations behind that?
Oh, sure. So I think that for me at least, I think it's important to give back, and I think it's important to help people that have less experience, less resources, things like that. And um, the nonprofit that you're talking about is Nice Moves. It's I'm the executive director, and it's something I started doing. I want to say, oh, I know exactly when. It was at the beginning of 2020, so it would have been just about 5 years ago. Because I remember joining with enthusiasm, and then something happened in early 2020
I
that
don't
really,
remember what
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
at
there
the
was
moment.
there was this thing that happened in early 2020 that really got in the way of like people getting together at events and creating community and whatnot. So yeah, I know exactly when that happened. Um, but yeah, the I think the idea was is that I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which isn't, it's not New York or LA as far as like animation, motion graphics, VFX is concerned. But we have a really great community around here. And I believe in it, and I wanted to kind of help grow it and nurture it and whatnot. Encourage people to feel like they had a place here. They didn't necessarily have to go. If they went to school here, if they grew up here, they didn't have to leave in order to do good work. Again, this was before COVID, where now so much remote work ends up happening that it isn't that big of a deal. But at the time, it definitely was. Um, but I know that you're like, well, this is a thing that is completely different. But for me, again, it's not quite as night and day as I joke with people sometimes, because even in the context of work, we run like workshops to help students kind of get into commercial animation, which is what our studio does mostly. We just announced, or we just kind of recently had like a thesis grant that the studio sponsored in order to help seniors kind of get their thesis films created, and a bunch of them are starting to release them now. So it's kind of like the idea of helping and the idea of nurturing younger artists is something I just care about, and I can do it in the context of the studio, and I can do it in the context of the nonprofit. And it's just something that I don't know. It matters to me, and it makes me feel good to help other people.
Um, is there a particular reason why that is like close to your heart? Um, the reason I'm asking like more specifically this is because I mean, now I think now it's getting more. It's happening more that like some studios are opening their doors and there's being talks and like PJ from the laundry now has like this like safe space. So but that didn't exist at least not when you started
Hmm.
doing it. It was not common. You know, we know internships, but like it wasn't as spread out as it is now. And so again, like trying to be like real here is like, is there like a specific motivation, like personal motivation? Yeah, like to give you an example, like I had to leave my country, and when I due to multiple reasons, and one of them was dictatorship. Um, and and so I know that, like for example, some topics are close to my heart. You know, like when I also try to help people in some way or another. Um, and of course, like migration is a topic that is sensitive to me, due to my past. I'm
Hmm.
not saying there's like a past that like like left a mark on you. It doesn't have to be dark, but I'm curious if there's like it's like not
Yeah.
everybody has like stars. It's you
Yeah.
that's not,
Mm.
you don't need those to do something good. So I'm just curious if, yeah, if there's something in particular that like motivated you to, or like to make you feel that you have to give back.
Uh, so I'll answer this maybe two different ways. Um, Base level, like I kind of mentioned, it makes me feel good when I see someone else that is happy and getting something that didn't take a lot of work for me, but maybe makes a big difference to them. That feels good. It just it's maybe you're like a little happiness vampire. You see someone else happy and it makes you happy. You're mirroring those feelings. So I mean, that's just purely base level. I think if I have to try and like go back and think what possibly was happened in the past that made me feel this way, I think it's exactly the opposite of having scars, because I think if anything, I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of help. I've lived essentially the privileged version of existence. So I think when I see other people that haven't had all of those opportunities, haven't had that kind of support, it kind of feels like I should do something to kind of give back a little bit. My parents gave me all the support that I needed when I was starting out. Um, my teacher in college, Dave Novak, got me my first internship and kind of supported me in getting hired in my first job. These are things that people didn't have to do, but they did it for me. Um, and if I didn't have those people's assistance and others, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't accomplish stuff on my own with my own toughness and whatnot. And I think everyone that was able to accomplish something would like to think that they accomplished it with grit and stamina and perseverance. And that's great. But there's that other component as well. Like one of my big pet peeves is people use the term "pick yourself up by your bootstraps," right? And they use it in like the wrong way nowadays because they use it like, well, why don't you just pick yourself up by your bootstraps? As if that's possible, right? Like the whole point of the use of the phrase is supposed to be that guy had no chance and somehow he picked himself up by his bootstraps. Like the person picking themselves up by their bootstraps should be the exception, right? It's a near impossibility. It's not the expectation. It's not that everyone should be able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. It really bothers me when people use it like in the wrong way. And maybe part of my motivation is to kind of like counter that thinking and counter that kind of sensibility that some people have.
It's really, I mean, it's really interesting what you're saying, and I find it like beautiful that like despite the fact that you, like you said, like I don't like to use the word privilege, but like you you had a lack of scars. Like some people like are kind of like blind to what happened next to them. They're kind of like living in a bubble where it's like everything follows their own lifestyles in a way. And I find it like great that like despite like the chance you had, you're looking next to you to people towards the people that didn't have the chance to have those things and to like give a hand. You know,
Yeah,
I've been
actually, I just want to say it's ironic maybe, but I didn't always think this way. So when I was maybe when I was in college, so late teens, early 20s, I don't know, like almost every guy, I was probably, I was kind of a libertarian. I was the why doesn't everyone pick themselves up by their bootstraps kind of guy. And the irony is that, or at least in this conversation, is that I think running the studio and having to interact with all the different people that worked at the studio and kind of see their problems and their challenges and their struggles, I think that really actually opened my mind to kind of understand, oh, here are all these kind of like difficulties and challenges that different people have that I have no experience of. And I was very kind of um, sheltered from realizing that. So the studio is the thing that I think made me understand what I do now. And yeah, I don't know. At least in the context of this conversation, that's a little ironic.
no, no, no. I mean, like I don't. I mean, personally, I don't find it ironic. Because I've been in many meetings where um successful people are in the meeting, um, and this like because they had like a lot of like these, like you said, like benefits or like luck, or let's call it whatever we want to call it. They don't realize that that plays a big role why they are where they are. And those meetings end up being like people patting themselves in the back for like, oh, how great, like I had a problem, I threw money at it, and we solved it, and a lot of the other creatives out there, um they don't have that flexibility. It's not like just it's not like they can hire a PR. They cannot like finance, like rent a whole place and hire people. It's like a whole different problematic. um and I think what make great studios is when the people at the head of those studios are they have their eyes opened wide enough to realize those things, um and realize that we're not all living the same reality, and facing the same challenges. um
Yeah.
and So that brings me like to this question, which is like, you've been mentoring these students and young creatives and like helping like them shape their careers. This might sound like a one-way relationship, but that's always a two-way relationship. Like when you dance with somebody, like both come out of that dance changed. And so I'm curious, like what those years of mentoring and being in touch with all these people has brought to you. Like how this what has this like teached you or like enriched you?
So I think it's in some ways it's I think helped me as far as the work that I do at the studio, because we don't have new junior artists here all the time, but when we get new junior artists over here, I think working with the students and working with the young artists, um, it helps me kind of do a better job with them when they get here to the studio. I think that has definitely helped as far as like work is concerned. I think it's I don't know, maybe it's helped me feel a little bit younger. Like sometimes it makes me feel older, but sometimes it makes me feel younger. Like it depends on the context of the conversation. But sometimes I have to explain things, and I get eye rolls because it's I'm using like a reference from 20 years ago, and some of these kids weren't even born at that point. And I'm like, all right, okay, let me think of something a little more current and a little more relevant. But I think that working with them um, keeps me a little more grounded in that way, right? Because I remember the challenges that I had when I was their age. I remember the things that I was going through. So it's kind of like that feeling of nostalgia you get when you hear a song that like you heard for the first time when you were like in your late teens or something like that, like when music was really like your music taste almost kind of got crystallized. I think it brings me back to that a little bit. Like I go back now to these schools, and it doesn't feel like I'm going there as like this kind of stranger. It's like, oh, I haven't been here forever. It's like I've always gone back to schools, and I've always kind of done talks, and I've had meetups with students and stuff like that. And I think yeah, I think the best way that I can say it is it keeps me grounded and connected.
Yeah, I always joke with the fact that like I always say that as we grow older, our rage is more controlled.
Yeah.
Like and their rage is like more raw. Like sure, they will be mad at everything, but they also have like this hunger for more that
Hmm.
we still have, but in a more controlled way. Like,
Yeah.
and I think like working with young people is, like you said, is like like it's like a call remembering you, like, hey, like don't forget this. Like we know that now you have a family, you run a business, and the clients, and like you have to be well spoken, and you have like all the protocols that we dance and abide by. um but some of this like savage energy, from time to time. It's it's good.
I think it's um, one of the artists here and I kind of talk about this a lot, where um, their curiosity is infectious, right? Like uh, if you're working with people in the workshops, that is something that I do like on the weekends outside of work, technically. Um, or if it's like all the interns that are going to be here that have started coming in for the summer, um, their desire to learn and their desire to absorb and their desire to experiment, I think seeing that and remembering that, and well, not even remember it, but hoping that that doesn't allow you to forget, right? You want to kind of keep that core within you, and I think if you maintain a curiosity and an excitement about projects and about new technology and about new styles, then you can still be young at heart, even if the body starts failing you
Yeah, I was
a
gonna
little
say
bit
we don't
more.
have the same
Mind and
energy
heart,
anymore.
yeah, yeah. I think that
Um,
that's cool.
you mentioned curiosity, and I've came across this situation, and I wonder if you come across them too when you are in this kind of a mentorship situations. It's like I either have in front of me somebody that like is extremely curious, either I have somebody like maybe I don't remember, but I have the impression that in like as the years goes by, and these new generations come in, it's either all or nothing. Well, I have the impression that before you had some in betweens,
Hmm.
um, and you're like it like either like I have like people that like if they don't know how to do something before even asking, they will search. They want to know, and they have tools at their disposal to search. And
Hmm.
if they don't find it, or if like there's like on like like stomping on this rock, then they will come and say like, hey, like I've been banging my head on this thing, I don't know how to do it, like can you help me? And then I have like also in front of me the person that like as soon as something doesn't work is like, how do I do this? And like, have you tried? And so I'm curious if like you're getting all the good ones, or if you're also faced to these kind of like two different different paths.
All right, so I don't want to out myself on this, right? But like I have very, very, very low threshold for person two that you described. And I mean that in two ways. One, it's really hard for me when people are like that because I feel like I'm the absolute complete opposite from that. I mean, I'll go and ask someone for information when I think it's relevant. Like I tell everyone, like, hey, if you need information, ask for it, go talk, whatever. Like, I think that that communication is like number one, and I encourage that all the time. But when it comes to like um, needing to figure something out, needing to accomplish something, right? I don't know if there's anything that someone could throw at me that I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that thing. I mean, maybe I have like physical limitations, like I I can't draw. Like my hand, literally my wrist eye coordination is poor or something, so I can't draw. Um, this body is never going to play basketball professionally, right? Like there's some of like those limitations, but almost anything else I'll figure out how to do it, I'll learn how to do it, I'll put in the time to the elbow grease that it takes to do that. So when other people don't do it, it is hard for me. um, and I don't know that I have a lot of patience for that. I probably should have more patience for it because again, different people have different strengths. Like some people are problem solvers and some people are not, but they have advantages and they have attributes that I'm lacking. But it is hard. It really is a hard thing for me when someone just can't can't just figure it out. um, I'm working on that. You hit a point there that I need to I think I need to get better at. But yeah, I think that a lot of the people that, even the ones that I know that I surround myself with, that maybe for me inside, I'm like, why can't they just figure it out? Um, in the spectrum of people in the world, they're definitely in the figure it out side of things. It's just that I think my threshold for calling someone a figuring it out person is also very extreme. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but
No, no, I
hopefully
do
it comes across. Yeah.
no, no, I do understand because I I feel very often like you. Like I also have like very low threshold um towards that group. But like through the years, I came to realize that like despite the bad luck I had in life with some things, I had luck with other things.
Hmm.
And one of the lucky things I had is that like I had two very smart parents that always nourished like curiosity in me, um, and stimulated that. And so now the approach I have with that is like maybe these people didn't have that chance, like to have like somebody stimulating curiosity. And so what I try to do then is try to find what's the right angle to like spark that flame.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
what's the thing that's gonna make them go like, oh, this is cool. I want to know more. Kind of like I did with my daughter when she started reading. And as every kid, they like pictures, and then like reading requires at the beginning an effort.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, what sort of book is gonna like catch her attention where she's wanna go like she will go like, I want to know the end of the story, and like keep reading. And so
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like the same with these people is like, let's not call it these people, with like the people that didn't that no, yeah, because that sounded bad, but like
Yeah. Those
with
people. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, with the people that maybe don't have haven't been like awakened to that thing.
Yeah.
um
Again, I want to say I don't like. I'm very much I say this a lot. I don't. A lot of people moralize statements like that, and I don't. Like if it's something is descriptive, I kind of, you know, I'd like to just be able to take it at face value. And it's like just because, like I said, just because someone doesn't solve it, while that kind of, doesn't comport with how I would do it, and I may personally not enjoy it, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily better or worse, because I mean maybe it's worse in that aspect, sure, but it doesn't mean that that person is like objectively worse or anything. It just means that, in that context, they just don't
no,
operate that way. And I think your empathy is something that I'm trying to develop and trying to improve with, because it is something that for me, uh, it doesn't come it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come organically. Like I was saying before, right? Like before I had the experience, before I had the insight as to why people have these kinds of different outcomes, I couldn't like imagine. I didn't imagine it on my own. I had to kind of either see it or be told about it, and learn about it in some kind of way. Um, so that is part of the reason I think having interactions with a lot of different people is helpful, because the more interactions, the more stories you hear, the more, at least for me, I'm able to relate and understand, how different people are.
that brings me to mind somebody I know who through the years has become a friend now. And he always used to downplay himself, like like saying like, yeah, I'm not good, like I don't like, I just like spend my money, like I fucked up in this, and like he was always being like very negative. And like one night we were having a drink, and he mentions like, yeah, when I was a kid, like all my brothers and sisters like were excellent readers, and I couldn't read. Like that wasn't possible for me. Um, but then I discovered like that he has like this insane music culture. But when I say insane, it's like, dude, you cannot imagine how crazy it is. Like how much he knows about music, like musicians, like which like year that album thing, like. And when he started like talking about, it, I was like, dude, like that's it. That's your reading. You know, they could read, but what you're doing now, they cannot. And I'm just bringing this on because like it's exactly what you mentioned. It's like I might be grumpy because of this thing they cannot do, but on the other hand, they might have like some skill which I would go like, fuck, like you know, and
Yeah.
um, and so I always say like no job is beneath us, um, and always like respect everybody, no matter the age, the where they come from, like you never know. Um,
Yeah.
and is the like because from like what we've been talking, I know that everything comes back to the studio.
Almost
So
everything.
almost
Almost.
everything.
I sometimes talk in absolutes that I don't necessarily,
No, no,
you
no, but
know,
it's fun.
it's a little too much, but you know, it is what it
I'm
is.
just messing with you.
Yeah.
Um, do like I'm just trying to think how to phrase this properly. Have you what have been like you mentioned like evolution in you, like how you work, and how was that like transposed to the studio? Now we're gonna work talk maybe a little bit more of the work. It's like
Hmm.
since you started the studio, how do you see those like steps, you know? And what were for you like those milestones?
Uh, so, you know, again, talking in absolutes, I do sometimes joke with people that, and I think I may have even mentioned this at the beginning of this talk, that I've only had like this one job, basically, like right out of school or right during school is when we started the studio. So um, I've always done this. But the reality is that what this is has changed. And I think that there have been like different evolutions and different milestones as far as the work here is concerned that have happened over time. You know, obviously when we started, it was you know, three guys, equal partners. So you know, you're doing the work and trying to run the company and get work and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, you do less of the work and you're directing more. And then at some point, you do none of the work. You find out. In fact, I know exactly when I did my last shot. It was October of 2012. So, you know, what is that, 13 and a half years ago at this point? Um, yeah, I know exactly when I did my last shot. And it's not that I don't get to do anything creative anymore, but now it really is starting to shift more and more into truly kind of creative direction, truly kind of trying to decide what are we doing as a studio, what does the studio look like years from now. You know, there's a lot of changes that are happening in the industry right now that have to be taken into account. As a studio grows, there's different structures and different systems that need to be brought to bear. And we've always just kind of done it our way and learn and grow as a studio. A lot of the people that are here and hold key positions, this was their either their first job or like one of their earlier jobs, essentially. So it's not like you know, there's a lot of studios that are a collection of a creative director and a producer and a whatever that have all had like, you know, 10 or 15 years of experience that come together and start their own project essentially, whereas we kind of grew up here to a certain extent. So there's a lot that has to be built as we grow and as we change what our approach is. And yeah, hopefully we do it our way, but in a way that's not too crazy, but is also kind of unique and uh, is designed for how we work and not just like a generic solution. Um, so yeah, there's the as those milestones, as you kind of reach different levels and take on different types of work, um, you just have to kind of constantly be changing and constantly be evaluating the way that you do work. So I could maybe point to, oh, this was a milestone and that was a milestone, but I think once you zoom out, it's kind of like, if you look at a calendar and you look at just like the week or the month, you can see like the resolution. But even the milestones, as you zoom out to like the decade view or whatever, it really, I don't think you would see like big leaps necessarily. You
No,
would
no,
see
no, of
a
course.
really nice kind of, it looks like the stock market graph. It kind of goes up. Yeah, there was that boring period where it dipped, and then there's the exciting period where it shoots up, and usually those things happen right next to each other. It really probably looks a lot like a stock market chart or something like that. But I think as long as you continue to grow, as long as you continue to improve and learn and figure out new things, um, I think there it can remain interesting and always feel fulfilling, I guess.
Yeah, like there's this book written by Harari that's called
Hmm.
Humanity.
Yeah.
And like he mentions how like human structures, like compounds of people,
Hmm.
uh they can like kind of like automatically organize themselves until a critical number or complexity,
Hmm.
and then they either like split apart or they need to like supersede that with something else.
Yeah.
um and the thing is like that moment where you need to supersede that with something else is critical. Like it's either the company like lives or it falls apart, and you don't see that in the graph. Like the graph is like, okay, it keeps on going, but those like critical points are still there,
Yeah.
even if people don't see it. um and I mean, as you mentioned earlier, talking about like always putting the goal a little bit further, like the vision of what the studio is a moving target. um and I think it wasn't like you mentioned like your last shot, like when was your last shot you did. And Erin Sarofsky, like from Sarofsky, said something similar during the podcast. Like she said, like in the beginning, I was bummed that like I wasn't doing that much of creative work. While now I'm like, business things. Like she's like, she learned to like grow fond of like stuff that she considered like not interesting before,
Hmm.
and that's because she had to step in other roles and stuff like that. But that gave her like a different perspective,
Hmm.
and I suspect that it was like similar also for you.
Nope. Complete opposite.
Okay,
Complete opposite.
that's awesome.
I,
Great.
yeah, no, fair enough. Um, I, 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 I thought it was the same for me for a while, but that's because I was thinking of myself based on, I think, what other people's expectations would be. So, like sometimes you kind of fall. I don't know what the word is for this. It's like there's like an archetype, right? There's like, oh, you start out as an artist and you love doing the work, and then all of a sudden you don't get to do the work anymore, and now you're disappointed. And I think like I just played into that trope because that was like the cliche version that I was like, oh, I'm doing the thing that everybody else talked about, right? But then um, this was again talking to one of the students that was asking me some questions about this kind of a thing, and this person asked me, um, like, do I miss that? Like, what is the thing that I miss the most about it, or something like that? And I thought about it for a little bit, and I kind of had to respond. I was like, I don't miss it actually. And the reason I don't miss it is because I actually didn't start out as an artist. Like a lot of the people that work at the studio and that work in the industry probably were like the artistic kid, the kid that drew a lot when they were kids, and they took their drawing or performance or whatever talents, and somehow it turned into a job, right? How do I turn this thing that everyone has been complimenting me for during my childhood, how do I turn that into like a paying gig? And for me, I wasn't an artistic kid. When I like in order to apply to art school, I went to the library and got like a how to draw book because I had to have like four drawings for my portfolio. I had to have like a portrait, a still life, a landscape, and an interior. I was like, well, I don't have any drawings. What do I put in this portfolio? I was like, well, I guess I'll make some drawings. And I'm like, all right, line work, shading, line weight, like perspective, atmospheric, but like just going through some of these principles. All right, let's make some drawings. And I probably made, I don't even remember what they looked like, but I'm sure they were horrible. I'm sure they were terrible drawings. Um, but that's what I had to do in order to get into art school. Now, granted, I don't think I got into art school because of those four drawings in my portfolio. It was probably because I already had 3D animation, a 3D animation reel back in like the year 2000 as a someone that was just graduating from high school, because I enjoyed like the technical aspect of it and some of the visual as well. Um, but I always wanted to get into this. The reason I started studying and the reason I went to that school was in order to make this stuff. Like I always wanted to make it. It wasn't about I enjoy drawing it, I enjoy sculpting it, I enjoy editing it, I enjoy telling the stories of it. It was a more ambiguous. I wanted to make it. This has nothing to do with the name of the studio, by the way. This is pure coincidence. Um, so when the time came to step back from the day to day sitting in front of software and moving pixels and vertices and keyframes around, turns out I didn't have like a hole in my heart, which was, oh, but I used to love modeling and I used to love setting keyframes and whatever. It was like, no, those were always steps in order to get to the final result, essentially. And now I can get to the final result, but everybody else is doing all the keyframes and the vertex moving and keyframe setting. So I kind of knew I always wanted to get into this position anyway, and that was my path to it. So maybe unlike Erin, who was like, "Oh no, I don't get to do it anymore," and then she found that she could find satisfaction without doing it. I didn't think of it at the time, but I think it was like, well, what do I have to do to get out of having to do it so that I can just focus on like the big picture or the business, or it didn't even have to be business. It could have been VFX supervisor or something, right? I think that's maybe what my original, if you would have asked like 19-year-old Danny, like, what's your end goal? It would have been maybe like VFX supervisor on like a Star Wars movie or some shit like that. I don't know. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many people are like that necessarily, but there's at least one.
I get it. I think we all have like different uh, trajectories regarding that. Like, I know for sure that when I was younger, like before doing art school, I was already using 3D softwares, and so I was already kind of like nerding out with that. And it's not that I enjoyed that much the technicality of it, but like you said, it was a means to an end.
Hmm.
Um, and as I'm like super curious, like then I dabbled into compositing and VFX and then like like motion wasn't even a word, like motion design wasn't even a word by then, and learning resources were really scarce.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I
So
remember trying to watch, you know, uh, old like DVDs of
yeah, yeah, those were horrible.
tutorials, and you're like, you can't even see the menus. The resolution was so bad that you had to like, I would have like the software open on one monitor, and I'd have like the DVD or the video playing on the other monitor, and I'm like, okay, so he went like four options to the right, and then the drop down, oh, it's the really long one. Oh, that's what that says. Okay.
Yeah,
And you almost have to like follow along, which by the way, that's a really good way to learn, literally following the instruction of the tutorial. You don't think about that at the time, but that's great muscle memory to form as you're watching a video.
yeah. But like then through the years, I of course went more into art direction and then creative direction, and I also work into live action. And like what I noticed now is like I'm trying to spend as little as possible on the box. Like I spend too much time on the box.
Hmm.
Like eh, I mean, and it's a hard one because of course like now pretty much everything's done on the computer. But if I can be on more sets or like supervising teams
Hmm.
and doing creative, I enjoy that way more than being like rotoscoping and keying stuff and compositing. And I think like maybe the software that has me excited is maybe Unreal
Hmm.
because of the responsiveness of it, like how fast you can iterate through it. That has me excited, but not even like because of the 3D, but because I see it as a mean to do like short films without needing a crew or without needing like all you need when you have to shoot live action. But
Yeah.
I still do prefer live action because of human interaction. Because like that's why I love about like also like being on set is like people, and everybody's bringing like their own unique perspective to the table, and it's a true collaboration. Like despite you, even if you say like, okay, this is my vision, like the DOP will interpret like what you're saying in shadows and light, uh,
Hmm.
and he will bring something. You will go like, oh fuck, I didn't thought about it like that, but this is amazing. And same with everything. It's like a Swiss clock, like all like with every cog like working together. Um, so I don't know if you're also into live action or not, but
Well, it's ironic because the one thing I do here now is live action directing. Like that's one of the few like I don't know if that's considered hands on, but that's the one like hands on thing that I do. But ironically, it's also probably my least favorite thing to do because I do like the control. I do like being behind a computer monitor. My desk is my comfort zone, ironically. So, I think it's interesting how by the way, I think that it is important for you, or not for you, but like it's more for anyone, uh, to step outside of the comfort zone, right? So even if I personally, like being on set, I think once I'm on set, once the energy, is there and we're now the clock is ticking and we're going and that's where like, it's a game time kind of a thing.
yeah,
I think I actually do enjoy. I mean, obviously there's frustrating moments. We all have them, but that there's a satisfaction that kind of comes after like a long shoot day or two shoot days where you feel like, oof, that was a
yeah,
thing. Like we
that was
accomplished
brutal.
something. We accomplished something, guys. But like leading up to it, I don't like, I'm not like, ooh, great, the shoot day is coming. Like for me, it's like, oh God, all right, I can do this. All right, let's go. And then you get yourself hyped up, and then you get there, and then it's fine, and then it's great. But for me, my home is at my desk with the monitors, and everything is controlled, and you can undo. I love undoing. That's fantastic. Um, so I don't know. That's my intuition. That's my comfort. That's my joy.
Yeah, like I have a friend that always says like at the end of each shoot, I'm like, I'm gonna die. I will never do a movie again or like shoot again, and then I do another one. And
Yeah, yeah.
and I like the beauty of the imperfection um of it for two reasons. First of all, because I do believe that endless tweaking is bad,
Hmm.
and also because it forces you to be creative in unexpected ways.
Hmm.
So
Yes, yes, for
sometimes
sure.
you end up in the edit suite, and I'm not even talking about the effects here. I'm just talking just story wise, and then you go like, "Fuck!" Like we would need this shot that we didn't thought of, and so the thing is not tying together correctly. Like, but then like you get creative. Like, okay, well then let's wrangle this here, then let's put this there, and then they play with sound and then you come up with ideas that weren't there initially, and to me that makes the whole process and even the end product like more interesting. um
That's funny. You're gonna hate me, but the my approach, even when it comes to making a live action commercial, is to make it as close to an animated commercial as possible. Like our commercials before we shoot them, there's like a 2D animatic, there's a 3D animatic. Like our when we do our scripts, like we don't just do interior, exterior, or like VO description. Like for us, um, we have essentially a table, and the table is literally like shot number, visual description, length of shot, via like it. So it's like literally, this is a 2 second shot, this is a 1 second shot, this is, and then when we shoot it, not only that, we'll sometimes look. It'll Our shooting schedule will actually have like, this is a 37 frame shot, this is a 42 frame shot. Like it gets really really specific to that stuff, and then when I shoot it, I try to stick to that like as much as possible. You still have to solve problems because there's just going from like your ideal version of it to just the reality of like physical tools and a physical space and real people, not just CG characters and stuff like that. There's a lot of room for interpretation there, but boy, our approach is very much like an animated piece, but just in live action.
so good news, I don't hate you. Secondly, I always prep shoots like that. Not maybe as far as saying like 30 images shot, but I do have like also storyboards and animatics and stuff like to see if like the whole concept works, like, and the concatenation of shots like makes sense.
Yeah.
That being said, I do feel that on set like you need to leave some space for creative expression uh to different like people on set, because they, like I said, they bring their own thing to the table, and also because um yeah, it's again, sometimes stuff happened on the edit suite
Hmm.
that to me like I'm convinced made the product better.
Yeah, no,
When you
100%, 100%. Yeah, and even you could have the most detailed animatic, right? And like I said, but then the CG virtual world comes crashing into reality, and you're like, oh, we wanted to zip the camera around in a certain way, and you're like, oh, the camera actually weighs 35 pounds and has momentum, and what are we? How do we do this? Uh, there's just the way that the performance comes along. It's like, yeah, I wanted that shot to be 37 frames, but you know what? It's got to be 41. What am I going to do? Where am I going to find those 4 frames? I'm going to have to compromise somewhat. Not kidding. Uh, there are like some nice things that come about when you actually get to a location that isn't exactly what you wanted to do. Sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes the lighting works just a little bit differently. You get inspired by like the colors of the set that don't exactly match. And I think for me, instead of like coming to it fresh, I have a preconceived notion, and for me, it's kind of like it's almost like a Rubik's cube. It's like but like something when the colors change, so now you have to like solve it slightly. Like you have to solve it slightly differently. So I don't come into it with no preconceived notion, but now I have to be like, how do I maintain this thing that I wanted very precisely before, but with the circumstances that I face now? Like, do we just rotate the whole scene 90 degrees and now it works the same way? Actually, yeah, it still works, but now we get like a better background or something like that.
Yeah, but
That's
that
kind
happened.
of the stuff that I face, generally
That
speaking.
happens all the time. Like, to me, honestly, that there's even like moments where you realize that something is not working on set. Like it worked in your mind, but on set it's not working. So you have to
Yeah,
rethink that shot. Like, okay, we
yeah,
have to do something else. But then that means it doesn't connect anymore. And then you go like, okay, yeah, don't worry. And like that's part of the like the that's what I think makes being on set so exhausting at the end of the day. Like when you end the day, you go like, it's because your brain is like constantly chugging. And then you
yeah,
go like, okay, well then we will solve this in VFX because we can cut this out and this blah blah blah. But
yep,
then like we're missing this. Yeah, don't worry, we can get stuck. That we can put in the middle and with this thing, so we don't have to lose time shooting that specific. Like, all that like constant thinking. Um,
yeah.
and I think it's also like such a formative exercise. Um, because it's not like troubleshooting with time ahead. It's like it's just live on the
It's in
clock.
real time. You have to do it
Yeah,
now. Everyone's looking at you. They're like, "What are we doing?" And it's like, "Well, hold on. Hmm?
yeah.
Okay, here's what we have to do." And there's a lot riding on that because if it's broken or if it doesn't work, ugh, everyone's counting on you basically. I
Yep.
will say we have the um, ace of the sleeve that is we do a lot of VFX. So very often, like even if I screw it up on set, the worst thing that happens is that we fix it afterwards.
They got your
So
back.
yeah. So it's rarely so risky. I mean, we can replace backgrounds, we can transpose performances from different takes. Like there's a lot of stuff that we've done in the past that you're like, if I didn't have the flexibility to fix my mistakes later, this could have turned out kind of sloppy. So
I always have this
yeah,
horror story when I was like freelancing as a VFX artist, where we were compositing shots for a TV show, a Swedish TV show, um, about murders and the serial killer thing and whatever. And then there's this scene where the guy like takes like pants, throws them in the garbage bin, and then lights them on fire because they are one of the proofs of the murder. And so they give me the shot. It's like, yeah, okay, well, you have to put blood on the pants, and so nothing. You cannot track fucking anything, and the pant is like constantly doing all that thing. And I was like, what? So I spent literally, I don't know, 2 days, 3 days maybe, painstakingly by hand, like animating, like warping things, and like and then like when they gave me the shot, I was like, why didn't they just like took the pant, put blood, just like cost of the pant, $30. Cost of the
Yep.
thing, I don't know, $10. Like cost of 3 days me working on that
Yeah.
shot,
Yeah.
way
Exactly.
more. And I was like, why? Like, and that production had like a couple of shots like that where we all ended up looking at each other, going like, why? Like,
I mean, people just forget sometimes. You just don't realize it. Like, I was working on a project recently where, they shot it. We're there. We're editing it. And after a few days, I'm like, there's a guy just standing in the shot that's not supposed to be there. And it's not like he's not. It wasn't even like, oh, he was like, like behind a dumpster over there where like everyone thought that he was gone or something like that, and like you could just kind of see his head. No, I mean, like, if like this is the frame, he's just standing in the midground in the shot. So that likely was a lock off, so we could just paint him out, and like that's not a big deal. But you're like, what's what's up with that? You know? So it's like, because everyone's rushing, right? You're rushing, rushing, rushing. Then you're
yeah,
rushing through your rough cut. You're rushing, 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 and then all of a sudden, someone finally like slows down just enough to like look, and you're like, oh my goodness, like that thing is there. So stuff like that happens. Mistakes, but probably my heaviest lift from a VFX fix standpoint was we were doing a spot where this woman was supposed to be like walking around like a not like a downtown area, but let's say she's walking around downtown, right? And she's like walking on the street, takes a left, takes a right, and she's like talking about this thing. And the way that, at least in my memory, the project was envisioned is that she's like all over town, right? She's here, she's there, different stores, different areas, and she's just like talking about the thing. Okay. So we shot it and we're bouncing, we're in all these different areas and whatever. We put the edit together, and the client feedback was, so yeah, this works and everything, but guys, she's like jumping around from place to place. Like, this is supposed to be as if she's like doing one continuous path. And I'm like, oh no. I mean, it wasn't shot like that.
yeah.
No one said anything about
Did you
this.
read this? Did you read the script?
I could have sworn that this was discussed. I mean, we were on the shoot. We were obviously in all these like different places that weren't continuous. No one said, "Wait, why are we bouncing between all these different places? Shouldn't we be like continuing around the corner or whatever?" And I was like, "Okay, let me think about this a little bit." And what we ended up doing is we ended up taking all the shots the way that they were, and then we took the previous environment and like CG'd it like behind, and we stitched things together
Yeah,
so that it
projecting and everything.
looked like she was walking in like a continuous path, but all the shots were shot like completely disconnected. um, so that was crazy. that
So
that
much
was
roto.
that was a lot of roto, a lot of CG, a lot of work went into that. I would say more work went into the post to accomplish that. From my point of view, direction change. From their point of view, maintaining the original intent. Well, it depends who you ask. But whatever you want to call it, that was a lot of work that was very much not expected. But once you do something like that, it kind of makes you realize, well, if I can do that, boy, I can't screw anything up anymore, can I?
Yeah,
I could fix anything.
yeah. It's still a lot of pain, but you know, um, Danny, to like slowly land the plane here. Um, we sort of talked about the past, and we've talked about the present. So now let's maybe close it up with the future. Since you mentioned that you kind of like to be in this position where you're looking at the big picture and like thinking about like where are we going to be in 5, 10 years and stuff like that. Like, where is your head at right now? Where where I'm not going to say where are you headed because that's still uncertain nowadays,
Yeah.
but like where do you want to be headed?
Well, I am actively thinking about that a lot right now because that's an important thing that needs to be figured out. I mean, I don't want to turn the conversation into all the uncertainty that's happening right now in the economy and the market with technology and all of that. I think that everyone's talking about that. We don't need to go down that path, but um, I think the biggest thing, yeah, that I'm trying to figure out is what is our place in the world over the next handful of years, let's say, and how could that place be better than it is even today, right? Like, I don't think it's just about, oh, how do we maintain? I think it's how do we evolve? I think it's how do we grow? And I think if you're constantly growing and if you're constantly improving and if you're constantly going for new and interesting things, um, even if there's like some bumps in the road and there's some challenges along the way, like you're aiming so far kind of like past that wherever you're going to land, hopefully it's past all those hurdles, essentially. And that's the thing that I am actively trying to figure out. I mean, I think I have thoughts and aspirations and plans, but how exactly does that happen? I don't have that. I don't have that plan yet. I think my biggest epiphany that I've had recently is really just the idea of continue to improve, continue to get better. You don't even have to necessarily make a perfect plan of like, this is exactly where we're going and this is exactly who we're going to be. Um, but if we're always making steps in that general direction, even if we, instead of like, going here, we end up going there, I'd still rather like go here and then correct slightly than, hover here for I don't know how long before eventually aiming and then not getting here because like that point has now already moved past us, if you know what I mean.
No,
Uh,
yeah. I,
yeah.
I think we are specifically living in a time where I think it's more difficult to kind of like know where to go. Like for example, when COVID happened, you know, well, I immediately thought to myself, okay, like filming sets, that's gonna be like gone. So I need to pivot. And I said like, okay, the world needs to keep working, and people will need to communicate anyway. So I like rebalance my stance way more into motion design, which I
Hmm.
was already doing, and that was great. Like as motion designers, like we had a great run during COVID because
Yeah.
tech was spending dumb money on everything. Of course, now we suffer the backlash of that
Well,
now.
now is the correction. Yes.
Correct. It's the pruning out. Um, but we are in a context nowadays where so much and is happening and so fast that the outcome of where we're going is like very hard to define.
Yeah.
Um, and like with technology and yeah, even like how the world is kind of like reshaping itself.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't know what's your analysis on that, but like I haven't figured out yet, at least myself, um, sort of where our industry is kind of like going.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, I have thoughts, obviously. I mean, I have to have some kind of direction or actions that I want to take. Are they the right ones? Time will tell. But us as a studio, things that I'm focusing on is doing um, bigger, more complex work. because I've thought this for a couple of years now. It's been kind of the direction the studio's been moving, because I think as technology advances, as equipment advances, one or two people are able to do what it used to take teams to accomplish. But there's like a certain kind of um, scale or complexity that still requires a certain level of production, a certain level of coordination, a certain level of mindset, where you can't just have anyone do it. Not anyone. Again, that's maybe hyperbolic language, but it becomes fewer and fewer people are capable of putting that kind of production and that kind of work together. So I think for studios, pushing for those kinds of projects, I think is going to be essential. Otherwise, you'll be replaced by, you know, generative whatever, or just smaller teams that are able to do the work. I think that there will be a lot more generative work being done, but I think there's also going to be room for like work that's more authentic, that is more human, I guess, for lack of a better term. Um, there's, do you remember there was this? People don't do this so much anymore, but when CG first came out, there were all these, or not when it first came out, when CG became common enough, the biggest commercials, some of them were fully CG, right? They were like, yeah, great, let's do a big CG extravaganza. But you had like the counter to that, which was, let's do it practically. And like the point of whatever piece we're doing is that it was done practically. And if you suggested, hey, you could just do this in CG, it would be a lot easier. Like, no, no, no. The whole point is to do it practically, and to have like a behind the scenes video that shows that we did it practically, and the audience is going to appreciate that we did it that way. I think you're going to have that kind of response as well. I think there's, the more authentic, the more original the work feels, I think there's going to be an appreciation for that. So I think that's another direction that people can go. Um, yeah, there's more of those kinds of things, but it's like, I think you just have to start finding what are all the places that are interesting, and that the problem solving is going to have to be something that is relevant to whatever it is that we do. Um, and that's kind of what I'm pushing for.
You brought me to memory this German company that does like slow motion with robots.
Hmm.
And all the shots that like now people are doing with Houdini, with
Yeah.
like the chocolate flowing and
Yep.
the milk thing and everything. Well, they do all of that practically, and it's like a beauty to see like how they take like, I don't know, 2 hours prepping the shot, and then it's just like
Yeah.
everything
It's one
splashes
second.
everywhere. You go like,
Yeah.
man, is the shot good? And then you see the footage and you go like, oh my god, like it's like, but like again, the how meticulously the things are done,
Hmm.
it's just incredible.
And it's funny because the precision now of like, not only is the camera on a robot arm, but the little thing that splashes the milk is on a robot arm. And there's another thing that is timed to happen just at the right moment. And the lighting now is like so good, right? Because you don't need like big 4K tungsten lights. Like, you can put the lights just where you want them and with just the right shape, that even the live action slow motion footage at 1,000 frames per second, the quality and fidelity of it is so good that it almost looks like CG. And now you're like, is the real thing CG? Is the CG thing real?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know anymore. But that's good, right? That means
Well,
you can get there both ways.
to me, that's when it's good. When you don't, you cannot tell anymore. It's what I call invisible CG.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's when you don't see it, and then you go like, oh, you know what? Like the whole thing in back, like that doesn't exist, and you go like, wait, what? That's not a city. No, that was a part of Hong Kong with a part of like New York and with this thing,
Yeah.
and then they're like, and you go like, oh, like, well, I mean, we work in it, so we can sort of tell yet, like for now. But I mean, when the people, like the audience, don't see it, and like I remember how many times people like go like, "This is CG. It looks like worse than ever. Like CG is like dumbing down," and then you go like, "No, dude, that's all real."
Yeah.
It's like, I don't believe you, and then you show the behind the scenes, and then you're like, okay, like so,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
used to the CG looking so good that now you see reality and it's disappointing. Yeah,
exactly.
that happens.
Let's close it with that. Like, we're getting to a point where reality is getting disappointing. Let's bring, let's,
Yeah, that's a great message to leave everyone with. Yeah,
yeah,
disappointing reality, guys. Oh
let's
well.
bring more of the CG into real life. Come on, guys.
Yeah. No, I here look. I think that what I would like to say is that while the methods that things are being delivered is uncertain, right? There's formats and different distribution methods and social and streaming, and some people still go to the theaters. There's all these different ways of showing things. There's all these different ways of making things and whatnot, and it is very confusing. What is the best way? What is the right way? If there even is such a thing. But I think that what everyone should think about is it's if there was ever a time where it didn't matter, people have been saying for years, it's not the tool, it's how you use it, or it doesn't matter what technique you use, it's more about the message. Now, I think that is more relevant than maybe ever before. Maybe before was a bit of a kind of a cliche where I was like, well, no, sometimes having a really good camera is better than having a bad one. And having like a really good render farm meant you could render stuff that you couldn't do otherwise. Like that is true. But now, as people are able to render stuff on their laptops, do things in real time, use generative to create elements as well, it really starts to come down to what people have been saying forever, which is message, storytelling, purpose, point of view, like all those kinds of things, it actually matters. And I think that that's cool because, maybe for me, I know there's some people that got into this industry because they wanted to just draw. But like I said, I got into it because I wanted to make stuff, I wanted to create things. So now the challenge is not just are you able to make it, but what are you making? And that is a much higher level problem to solve. And I think that that is something that we should all um, embrace.
Yeah, I would say regarding what you just said is, despite the technical aspects of the medium you're into, there's no entry barrier. You
Yep.
literally need pencil and paper. That's all you need to like be creative. I mean, like to start like writing down ideas, just ideas, just like what is this talking about? Like, what's the story? What's this character doing? Like, or is this a logo? Like, is it like a, I don't know, has it a fox in it? Like, just like putting your mind to work. And that's something I always like share when like either people complain about not having the right tools, or like people saying, oh, yo, you creatives, like you've been like gatekeeping us from all the creativity, and I'm like, dude, like no, like nobody has been gatekeeping shit. Like, take a paper, like take a pencil, and just get to work. Like, and if you haven't, it's because either you don't want to or you're lazy. But it's like, it's not because you don't have an Alexa camera or because you don't have this. Like, there's been award-winning movies shot with a phone.
Yep,
You
we've
know,
got to that point. Yep.
so I remember like seeing 28 Days Later, which was the
Yeah.
first feature film shot with a digital camera,
Hmm.
and when you look at the image is not great. You can really feel the shitty sensor and like the
Yeah.
compression, and like it's, I mean, it's well lit and everything, but you feel the data. in there. Um, that didn't stop the guy from doing it. Um, so I mean, I agree with you that like now more than ever, like the technicality of it will become less and less relevant. And um what will really matter is what you have like in here.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I leave the floor to you to your last statement before we end up this podcast.
Well, I mean, I just want to say thank you for having me on. It was a very fun conversation and very engaging. I like that we were able to agree on a lot and still have different perspectives on different things. I think that that's always that's always awesome. That always feels good.
I always love to agree to disagree, you know. Thanks for being with me, Danny, and for spending the time. And I don't know. I see you out there.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Take care.